Good evening, everyone. It's social distancing at the chamber. As always, we are joined by our CEO, Glenn Hammer. Sometimes we call this happy hour with Hammer. One of those nights, we got another big time star with us. You want to introduce our special guest?
The best economist in the state of Arizona. This guy is, I'll tell you right now, actually, out of any economist I know, I trust what comes out of Jim Round's mouth more than anyone. And Jim, I'm just grateful for the partnership, the friendship, and just, you're just optimism. You've got a great Arizona spirit. So Jim, welcome to the program.
Well, I appreciate those comments.
Well, Glenn, you wanted to talk to Jim tonight about maybe we'll peer into the economic crystal ball a little bit. We're going to talk about recovery eventually. So Glenn, have at it.
Well, Jim, we've been, and I appreciate that our friend Jim Cross from KTAR has given us a lot of airtime. We've been talking a lot about COVID-19 and what it means for the economy. So can you maybe just frame things as to where we are right now and give us a perspective, please?
Yeah, and I think that's the key. The number one key on all these complicated economic issues is to have the right information. And that's what, your group and other groups are trying to gather right now, the right information about how to maximize business retention opportunities, how we're going to come out of this downturn. But at the same time, I think we have to have a better feel for how the business cycle is going to shape up, because there's still a lot of people that think that we're going to have a very steep V-shaped recession and we're going to bounce right back out of it. Some people are calling it a U, which just means a V-shaped recession, but it doesn't kick in right away. They're talking about double dip recessions. We're going through so much pain right now. Our 2023 recession that was being forecast, that's done. We're not going to have that again. We're going to have a pretty it's going to be smooth sailing for the rest of the decade if we do everything right. I do feel like we're setting ourselves up for not only managing the front end of this crisis, because you have to try to figure out a way of helping businesses, but we have to be practical at the same time, because I've done pro forma for businesses, I've run my own. A $10,000 grant will help some. It's not going to help a lot. So it's going to have some impact on the economy, but unfortunately, we're going to lose some of these businesses. But here's the beauty of the basic economic foundations that we've been setting up with the governor over the last several years, is if we have a good workforce, we have good infrastructure, we have a good regulatory environment, all these things that are really strong. Once those are set, it allows us to create the high wage jobs that then creates all the other lower wage jobs as well. So the fundamentals are there for it to work. Now, I still feel like we can fine tune things, and I'm hoping that we do. But I think our best opportunity, at least in my opinion, this is where I'm the most optimistic among some of my colleagues, is I feel like we can take advantage of this downturn, this crisis, and learn from it. I'd love to see Arizona be just this huge immunology hub for the entire country going forward. A lot of high-tech activities in healthcare. I'd like to see a lot more manufacturing coming back. I'd like to see more suppliers locate locally, because that increases the multiplier effects that creates all those jobs that we sometimes talk about. So as long as we keep the fundamentals in place, but we keep tinkering with it, the job's never done. I still feel like this next decade is going to be our best ever.
Jim, the state revenues pre-pandemic were up a little over 8%. That would tell a person like me that the fundamentals of the Arizona economy were not just sound, they were very strong. And we've got north of 970 million in the rainy day. Can Arizona state government weather this period?
It can if it's careful. And as a big supporter of the governor's large rainy day fund deposit, because to get through a downturn without economic harm, you actually need a couple of $2 billion. It's not just $1 billion. So this was a very smart hedge against what was that we already saw, that light at the end of the tunnel, or I should say darkness at the end of the lit tunnel, because the economy was going to be slowing. If we if we continue to pursue some of these policy programs at the same vigor and not get stuck with very specific items. So I love the fact that we're looking out for small businesses. I'm one of them. Those are my people. But at the same time, we have to do what's best for the economy as a whole. And sometimes you have to go through that triage, and the best bang for the buck in terms of the return on investment might be a slightly different program on the tail end. But I do feel like that's our opportunity. If we can keep people focused on taking care of the today, but then not forgetting that we can be working on this stuff going forward. And I know you guys have been all over this. Other groups like GPEC and others have been talking long-term, ASU, many others. We just have to try to bring this together, and it has to gel a little bit more. Right now, it's still a little bit loose, but this is hard stuff. It takes a little bit of time before people get on the same page.
Yeah. Glenn, you
Jim,
back?
could you, yeah, I'm dealing with, right now I'm basically dad with 2 teenage daughters, and they don't necessarily understand the dynamics of the stay-at-home situation right now. So dealing with that. And a wife who is insisting on texting me every 6 seconds. So, but we've got a show. And Jim, can you just put it in some perspective? I mean, we've had 350,000 unemployment claims in the last month. Just some perspective in the state of Arizona for what those numbers mean.
Yeah, and these are huge numbers. When we talk about hundreds of thousands of jobs lost or gained, we're usually talking about the US level. Now we're talking about many tens of thousands of lost jobs at just the individual state level. It's a big deal. And remember, in some cases, you're losing that spin-off job, like the restaurant job. But in other cases, after a little bit of time goes by and businesses realize maybe we can't hold out for a year and pay everybody the same wage with productivity being down, that's when the bigger companies start letting go of their higher skilled labor, their higher wage labor. And then those are the ones that come back last. And so I think in terms of where we're going to see the pain, you're going to see it everywhere. I'm going to go ahead and try to do a little bit of a high level analysis of, at these different rates on these different scenarios, what might the next 6 to 9 months look like for us on the fiscal side? Because until we get a good feel for that, it's really hard to implement the policy. Like, if you don't know if your bullpen's good or bad, it's hard to know how to manage it. So in this case, I feel like we have a lot of good things set up in place, but I feel like we can kick it up a little bit. Now, so I'm optimistic about that, but I'm also nervous. I shared that with you before too.
Yeah. Well, we're going to have to kick it up, because when I just do the numbers, we have maybe 3 million jobs, public and private. We've had 350,000 people apply for unemployment insurance. It's over 10% of our total workforce, and that's even a higher percentage when you think of the private workforce. But I appreciate the optimism. Yesterday the governor announced we're starting the focus on recovery, and he's put Sandra Watson, who my book is the best economic development official in America, in charge of this, and he's having Debbie Johnson, who's the head of Arizona Office of Tourism, help with that sector that's just been decimated. What 30,000 foot advice would you give to them as we start the process of thawing out the closed parts of the economy?
Well, the one thing that I enjoy about the private sector is that it allows me to do Twitter rants on occasion. And yesterday, my Twitter rant was, I love the fact that we're talking about turning the machines back on in Arizona, but that's quite a bit different than kicking the economy into a higher gear. And so they're two different assignments, really. And I think people need to start segmenting them down. There's no playbook necessarily for what we're talking about, because this is so unusual, but we do need a set of instructions to some extent to say, in this case, we have to focus on these groups. It's fantastic how different groups have come together, and you find out Like I was really impressed with Valley Partnership and them taking a leadership role on a lot of the real estate items, things that I've been studying real estate economics for a long time, and they had some great ideas. So I feel like if everybody contributes, but we still have that kind of group that collects the information and then tells the right story, we're in good shape. And I do feel like we have some quality people in place.
Jim, let me ask you about the future of work and the future of the economy. You touched on a little bit about what does this look like on the other side? Does Arizona become a hub of some sort of innovation in epidemiology or something like this? Glenn and I were on a call earlier today with some manufacturers through our Manufacturers Council. We had a prominent member of state government talk a little bit about maybe new efficiencies that employers are going to adopt permanently. Even Glenn's talked about, around the water cooler about how many people does an operation need physically in the office? Do we need large offices? Have you thought of that through at all, or beginning to think that through?
Yeah, and what woke me up is the last economic downturn, so the Great Recession. When you go through tough economic times and it's short-lived, like over a year or two, normally people return to their previous behavior right away. When you have a long and sustained problem, like I think we may end up seeing with some of the small business comeback, you end up seeing more shifts in behavior. I think what we're going to end up seeing, and I'm pretty confident in this, unfortunately, is a lot of the places that we like to go grocery shopping at, the small stores, the restaurants, they're going to be gone and they're going to be replaced with an Applebee's or a Chili's or something like that. Eventually, some stores will come back, but because we're still going to be growing well. But I feel like we're going to be shifting towards a larger corporate presence than what we've had in the past. And that takes away from the character of an area a little bit. But I do also feel like this type of a meeting, I like to be hands-on with clients because sometimes you have to be in front of them and you have to see their expression to really get to know them. But it is awfully convenient to just throw in a ball cap and hop on the computer. So maybe it'll be somewhere in the middle, much like it was after the Great Recession, where we kind of found that new balance again.
Well, your point is that if we let nature take its course, you're probably right. That's what will occur. So, what we need to commit to at the Arizona Chamber is some of the initiatives like that Michael Bidwell and the Cardinals are working on to support local eateries, truly independent eateries, the ones that we love going. I love going to Press Coffee. That's one of my great sort of joys in life, my office away from home. We've got to redouble those efforts, or you're probably right. The institutions with the healthier balance sheets that can at least survive the next 2 or 3 months are going to survive, and those that have 25, 30 days cash on hand, they're done. So
Yeah.
I think your points are important, and it's helpful for us as we work through this problem.
Well, I appreciate the fact that you keep reminding people the same things that we've been talking about. It's really keeping this in front of everybody's minds that there's multiple steps, and it is critical. A very small change, you've seen some of the numbers before that we've done, very small change in the growth of the economy leads to billions of dollars in new tax collections and hundreds of thousands of new jobs. So we just have to keep getting that messaging out there, even if it's just a small white paper with a little bit of math on it or something. Just keep it in. We got to keep it in front of people, and you all are the best at it.
Well, Jim, there's going to be opportunities, and we know the supply chain is going to start shifting. There's going to be two big teams in the world, Team USA and Team China, basically. And I think we'll figure out ways to amicably coexist. But I just think with the U.S. Mexico Canada agreement, all the manufacturing and technology in our universities here, there's going to be some bright days ahead for Arizona and some of the industries of tomorrow. But we're going to have to weather the mother of all storms.
Yeah, I agree.
Jim, one thing that economists track is something called consumer confidence. And so you've probably put some thought into what consumer behavior looks like. The White House obviously wants to reopen the economy soon. You've got some in your profession who have said, unless consumers have confidence that they can engage in everyday commerce, it's going to take a while to thaw things out. Any thoughts on that topic?
Yeah, consumer confidence is a tricky one. I I put it in every speech, but only because I like to make a qualifier statement that in many cases it's not applicable. Because in some cases, when the economy is doing well, you hear some good news, you get the survey question, how do you feel about things? Like, hey, I feel great. I'm gonna go buy a TV. When things are going poorly, people are a little bit more down. In this case, though, I think this is a very psychological economic downturn. So even though people are going to get some money in their wallets, I don't think they're necessarily going to be spending it like we saw prior stimulus packages where the monies went out and they were circulated and it kept the economy going forward a little bit more. It is going to help individuals get through tough times, but it's just a little bit different. So we'll have to be careful with consumer confidence. But again, the right messaging and the right storytelling helps with that. And the biggest one to watch out for is unemployment. Back in the Great Recession, Arizona, we were number 49 in the country in terms of job growth, and we were one of the hardest hit in terms of the housing market. Because we were so beaten down, we had so many people that just stopped looking for work. They weren't counted as unemployed anymore. So we actually had an above average unemployment rate, and we didn't qualify for housing relief. Now, I mean, a lot of that has to do with federal government math, and sometimes can't get past that. But at the same time, there's ways of looking at the right information, and there's ways of looking at it improperly. And I think we just have to keep telling the story. The biggest thing for me these days is no one really cares about a specific number, but they like to hear a story. They like to hear why you're optimistic, why you think a particular small business is going to do okay, why you feel like there's good leadership out there, like with the Chamber and GPEC and others, ACA, that basically have our backs.
Yeah. Glenn, our guest, we kept him on past 15 minutes. You want to take us home?
Jim, really appreciate those thoughts, and we look forward to having you back on the show as we delve even deeper. But appreciate your analysis, your optimism, your constructive thoughts, and stay well. And thanks for being on the happy hour with us.
All right. Take care, guys.
All right.
Thanks, Jim. Thanks, Glenn. We'll catch you tomorrow.
All right. Thank you.